What's up, Internet, and welcome back to the Engadget Podcast. I'm Senior Editor Devindra Hardawar. This week I'm joined by Senior Reporter Carissa Bell. Hello, Carissa.
Hey, Dev.
Hello. And also podcast producer Ben Elman. Hey, Ben.
R.I.P. TikTok, question mark?
We have run this episode. I was looking through our show notes, I think 3 or 4 times at this point. Which is, the threat of the TikTok ban has been a thing. But it seems like it's actually getting here. Everyone's looking at TikTok. Everyone's looking at the Supreme Court. We are currently looking at January 19th being the day. That's this upcoming Sunday, is the day TikTok could shut down in the U.S. Because of what Biden had passed months ago. If they didn't sell, or if they didn't change ownership to a U.S. company, they would have to shut down by that point. So we are ticking towards that. Chris is eagerly looking at the Supreme Court updates to see if they're going to announce a delay or anything like that. So we'll talk about all that too. And Chris is the perfect person to dive into that with us. And also we are going to be talking about the moderation changes over at Meta and Facebook and everything. And also, I guess, sort of the weird right-wing downfall of Mark Zuckerberg. But maybe not just him. Maybe it's also like all the tech CEOs. Maybe they all just like could not wait to jump over, to be, I don't know, very pro-fascist at times. We'll talk about all that too, Carissa. I'm sure you've got a lot to say. And also this morning we woke up and Nintendo announced the Switch 2. So vaguely, we don't have details. We have a promo video. We have like a short press release, but we'll dive into some of our thoughts on that. As always, folks, if you're enjoying the show, please be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice. Leave us a review on iTunes. Drop us an email at podcast@engadget.com. You can also join us Thursday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern on our YouTube channel for our live stream. We've got a bunch of folks here right now. It's good to like chat with the live audience when we have new devices, and some are coming soon. We can show them off live in our Q&A as well, and you can ask questions. So join us. It's a fun time. So RIP TikTok, Carissa, can you, we've talked about where this started. We've talked about like many points where I think like several folks have tried to like stop this ban entirely. Where are we right now looking at the potential ban on Sunday?
So we're waiting for the Supreme Court to give its opinion. This was kind of TikTok's last-ditch legal effort to kind of block this law. We don't know how they're going to rule, but, from all the questions they asked, the people who kind of are good at reading the tea leaves of what's going on, it seems like they're very likely to uphold the law. It seems like TikTok is also expecting them to uphold the law. There's been, a lot of reporting that they're basically preparing that they will have to shut down on Sunday when this law is supposed to take effect.
And I think there were a lot of discussions about like what that would look like. Some people thought it would just be like TikTok would leave the app stores and like slowly degrade over time, but maybe you'd still see videos, but you'd be hooking into servers from another country or something. Does it sound like they're just planning to like fully kill it by Sunday if nothing happens here?
That's what it sounds like. We know that at minimum, the App Store and Google Play will have to remove the app so no one else can download it. There was, like you said, the speculation that, maybe it'll continue to work and will just kind of stop working over time. It sounds like from people who've kind of been talking to sources inside TikTok that perhaps they just wanted to basically just cut it off and stop working entirely. And you can kind of like, if you think about sort of their position, that makes sense. If they're trying to build more political will for their side, like it's probably more beneficial for them to just do a clean break rather than kind of have this like slowly degrading app that kind of works.
And also like, so people have a sense of like what they are losing too, and maybe the public will start yelling at their representatives as well. Ben, anything you want to mention here?
Yeah, Carissa, correct me if I'm wrong, but apparently the thing that they planned on doing was giving you the option to download all of your data. And I think that's all of the data of stuff that you posted, not all of your liked videos. I've seen so many people post like third-party possibilities for saving all of your likes. But so like option to download all of your data, and then also just an explanation of why this is happening, and just a long like article talking about what's going on. And I don't know if it's going to be like a call to action or anything. What have you heard?
Yeah, that's about right. I think we kind of saw a hint of this when the bill was first, going to votes in Congress, and they put those pop-ups in everyone's app that was, saying that TikTok might get banned, call your representatives. And it's kind of funny because that move sort of
Mhm.
backfired for them because all these TikTok users started calling their representatives, and these congressional offices were flooded with calls. And then, all these people in Congress were sort of upset by that and thought that this was China interfering with the legislative process, which, to be clear, I think is ridiculous because this was Americans calling their representatives, which is how democracy is supposed to work. But I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
that kind of like offers a template probably of how they're going to approach it this time. They'll let you download your videos. I'm sure there will be some kind of messaging in there about
Mhm.
whose fault this is and why this happened.
I feel like, yeah, it's in TikTok's interest to just be like, "Hey, we are your friends," right? The sort of memes around this, I think, just show like, I guess, the influence of TikTok in America, like the, "Farewell from your Chinese spy" meme, which is a lot of fun.
Which is
I
extremely funny.
Extremely funny, very like, to even explain that to the internet from 10 years ago, I guess you could. It is very much an internet brain kind of thing, but you also have to take in to the fact that, oh, now we're also all very much on this Chinese social networking app. And also, like, there's this weird meme culture, and humor has changed a bit because we've all lived through a pandemic and we're all a little insane, and it's all getting. I've seen some wild videos. I don't know. Have you? What's your favorite, Chris? Like, example of the RIP TikTok meme?
Yeah, there's that one. I think I posted it in Slack a
Hmm.
few days ago of the farewell from your Chinese spy. And it's just this guy saying goodbye, and then he starts like talking to specific people. He was like, Stephanie from Texas, like, don't drink so much Coca-Cola. um and he just starts going through a few like random people. And I think it kind of also shows like that TikTok users are so much smarter than we give them credit for.
Hmm.
So much of this bill is premised on like, oh, it's a national security threat because you know the youth are at risk of being manipulated by propaganda. And then you see memes like this, and it's like, not only do they not care, but like, the youth are a lot more savvy than we give
Yeah.
them credit for.
Not only do they
Yeah.
not care, they're like, "You know what? Screw you. I'm going to go directly to the Chinese Communist Party and sign up for Red Note."
I'm gonna go to the line of propaganda. Well, that's where it's like, it's definitely the TikTok audience, especially the loyal TikTokers and the influencers, are clearly smart and savvy about finding a new home on the internet. Red Note, which is a Chinese app that I've seen described multiple ways, but a lot of people call it sort of like an Instagram meets Pinterest for rich young women in China. Um, it is not sort of like an all encompassing, video social network like TikTok. It is more like Instagram, but people are on it and discovering, hey, there are actual limitations of a service run by China. Like, you can't talk about things. You can't talk about contentious topics. I believe you can't talk about LGBTQ issues in general. So it's China, folks. Like, it's weird how we're balancing like US bad in many respects, but also China's still very bad. And we got to pull back. Like, this whole thing started too because it started with in the first Trump
Trump's
administration.
executive order.
Yeah, Trump's executive order in the first Trump administration, like, he was really trying to put a stop to TikTok because he really hated TikTok. And then it ended up being a thing. It ended up becoming a more bipartisan thing in the Biden administration because I think a lot of representatives, a lot of folks in Congress got this secret information about how TikTok could influence Americans or the potential for harms, things that have never been made available to the public.
That's the sort of thing that
Yeah.
even the Supreme Court was uneasy with during the
Hmm.
hearing. They were like, well, we don't like the fact that there is like secret evidence, but they'll still take it into account. I think that there was also a pretty significant contingent in Congress that was disquieted by like all of the support for like Palestinian people.
Yeah.
And so they thought that this was astroturfed.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
couldn't imagine that this could be just people talking about all of the horrible stuff that they saw online.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was always kind of my point, was that why are there, if they're getting like if they have if the US government has some kind of information that, you know, the Chinese government is using TikTok to manipulate the American public, then like that's something that is in our interest to know.
You should tell
Uh,
us. Yeah.
but when these briefings were happening, though, some members of Congress came out and said, "Well, everything we heard was just kind of like hypothetical scenarios, like
Hmm.
something that could happen, something they might do, something that pretty much any app could theoretically be able to do, which is wild to me that that's what we're banning apps on
That's kind of
now.
what we're going with.
Yeah, and
It's not as bad as sort of like Colin Powell going to Congress and saying like we got some WMDs over there in Iraq, but it is very much like there's something at some point TikTok could do. That's bad. It feels, I don't know, weirdly reminiscent of that, although not nearly as extreme. Go ahead, Ben.
And like 2 or 3 ban threats ago, we were talking about how TikTok might be paying for the sins of all social media, and
Mhm.
especially American social media. And like we haven't done anything to really protect privacy on an individual American level. I mean, Google couldn't even like depreciate the third-party cookie because ad tech people complained too hard.
Well, Google never really wanted to do it too. Like it was the whole we reported on that story too. Google's like, hey, no more third party cookies, but we're gonna have this new system for online tracking and privacy. Never happened. Their heart
Well,
was
I
never really
think
in
that
it.
they wanted to own that standard. I
Yeah,
think that would have
yeah.
been in their best interest, but then they had to work with like their other stakeholders and they weren't able to get it going because all of these people were like, we can't change all that
Mm-hmm.
fast, or we
Mm-hmm.
don't want to.
Don't want to. I think that's the main thing. Not to say like there are certainly potential harms of having a large swath of America being tuned into like a Chinese social networking app all the time. We have talked about the sort of like cold war of cyber warfare that is happening. Like that's been happening for the past 2 decades between the US and China, but it's been mainly like small things. It's like China going in, stealing some files, and the US is like, stop doing that, maybe testing like some utility connections or something. And it's gotten worse and worse, but I think a lot of people are looking at TikTok as sort of like the misinformation thing, maybe data collection, although we don't know like how that would be any different than the data collection going to Meta or Google or anybody else, except those are American companies, so good for them, I guess. Is this in a weird way? Does it feel like Meta and Google and everybody kind of wanted this to happen too, just to get TikTok off the board as competition, Carissa?
Oh, this would be the best thing that could ever happen to Meta.
Yes.
I mean, Mark
Yeah.
Zuckerberg has gone before Congress, and said, well, really, the real threat is China, and, talked in, very not subtle terms about
Mhm.
how, we should really be boosting American social media companies, not Chinese social media companies, how, we really have to stay ahead of China. I mean, for them, like, this is great because this is their biggest competition. And I think it like says a lot that in a moment when TikTok is about to be banned and
Mhm.
so many users are flocking to another Chinese app instead of, you know, Meta's products, which he must be, that must make him so mad. Um, but this would be like the biggest gift to, and not just Meta, to Google, all these YouTube, all these like TikTok competitors, because for years everyone has been trying to replicate
Mhm.
what TikTok has created, and no one can.
No, well, and it's also like Twitter pre-Musk had Vine, and TikTok very much feels like the offshoot of Vine and everything. And TikTok itself, wasn't it? It was like a music sharing type of thing before it
Started as
became
Musically.
Musically.
Musically, yeah. But Vine had like a really vibrant community, and that was really, really short form videos, but people were using it for comedy, like really making fun little sketches that were infinitely repeatable. And people really started to play with that format too. So you could kind of make these endless loops of skits, sort of. And they
And
just
to
killed
the
it because it
point
wasn't going anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, it got popular to the point where even in like 2019 or
Yeah.
so, people were watching compilations of Vines from like 3 to 4 years ago. And I've seen people on TikTok now speculate that we might be watching TikTok comps in the future. I hope it doesn't get to that because I am a big proponent of TikTok.
Mhm.
I think it's great. Yes, it does put you in a filter bubble, but it puts you in a very supportive filter bubble. 90% of the comments I've ever seen on TikTok have
Mhm.
been positive to neutral. Like, where do you see that on the internet? Where you have comments supporting the person who made the video. It was a companion to me during the
Mhm.
pandemic, and I feel like I'm going to be losing a lot of really familiar faces if this app goes away.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people double post to like Instagram Reels and everything, but sort of going from hopping around TikTok to hopping into Instagram Reels feels like such a weird whiplash of like the content you're being served, because then all of a sudden I'm seeing more ads, I'm seeing more junk and more stuff that is weirdly targeted to me because your specific ethnicity or your family comes to a certain place. Like I see a lot of like Caribbean comedy and West Indian comedy via Instagram Reels. That never really hits me on TikTok. It's also not something I like actively seek out. But Meta has this very basic information about where I came from and my like
Yeah.
family social network. So like, you like this content about West Indians? And I'm like, okay, I mean, it's fine, but I'd like to see the rest of the world, please. Meta's algorithm seems like it still cannot compete with whatever the hell like TikTok has figured out in terms of recommending videos to people.
No, it really can't. And they
Mhm.
do that thing that Instagram is so good at where it's still they're good at kind of serving you sort of like addictive content,
Yeah,
to keep
yeah.
you keep scrolling, but it's not interesting. Like I find the same thing. It doesn't like delight you in the same way that TikTok does. TikTok also for better or worse, there's a lot of like news content on there.
Yeah.
I have so many friends, even my age, not, Gen Z, who tell me that they find out a lot about, the news from TikToks and like watching TikTok and watching people break down the like news stories of the day. And,
Mhm.
I think that matters. You can criticize kind of the media literacy component of that, but I like this will be like a news source. This is a platform where people kind of break down what's going on in the world.
And Meta
And
has really been like, no news, good times, happy times. Like that was the vibe with
yeah.
Threads, but I feel like that was always the vibe with Instagram too, right? Like I never really saw those news recappers doing much on Instagram. News organizations would like post pictures of their stories and stuff. You can't even post links in
Mhm.
Instagram, right? Like that's why link in bio became a thing, because
Yeah.
Meta's so terrified of people leaving its platform to be informed by the internet that you can't even post a link in your stuff, in your descriptions and everything.
And it was
Uh,
so weird that for so long,
mhm.
like only a certain number of people had a link in bio. Like I
Yeah,
think you needed to be a verified user on Instagram to put a link in your bio, and they only reversed that within the last couple of years.
I hate that. I've stopped using those servers as much, in the past few years, but especially after Zuck's turn and kind of seeing where all this is headed now, it is truly disappointing. It's sort of also like the difference between Threads and pretty much other microblogging services. Threads even versus Twitter, or Threads versus Blue Sky or something, and how that stuff is just empty calories. They're so excited to add AI people into those conversations, so you're just getting
Yeah.
useless AI chatter amidst
Hmm.
everything else, and it's like, yeah, we're just really going down a dark path here. Anything else you want to add? I guess, Carissa, as we're looking towards TikTok, definitely keep an eye on Engadget for Chris's updates on all this stuff. But your thoughts, Chris, at this point?
Just that it seems like even if it does get banned on Sunday, we shouldn't necessarily expect that to
Hmm.
hold up for very long. It seems like this ban has now become a hot potato where nobody really wants to take ownership of it. NBC News had a story last night that the Biden administration, which pushed for this ban,
Yeah.
is now looking for ways to delay it. Ed Markey in Congress, who also voted for this ban, by the way, now has a bill to, extend the deadline. Trump wants to save TikTok, so it seems nobody like actually in a position of power and responsibility wants to touch this or take ownership of the fact of
Hmm.
taking away TikTok from the American people. So
Because
I think that
nobody wants this aside from the politicians mainly, and not even like security professionals are saying this is the best path to securing information in America.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's a slippery slope toward,
Yeah.
banning other things. But I'm not sure what the like mass move to Red Note, if there is that much of a mass move, how
Yeah.
that figures into, because it's the idea of like, oh, darn, are we just going to end up playing whack-a-mole? Maybe it's just better to have everyone on TikTok.
Potentially, like, yeah, what is the end game for the red note fad, Carissa? Because I don't think it's going to end well, especially as people see how strong moderation there is.
yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of these apps that kind of go viral overnight, like
Hmm.
it'll end up being a blip. It'll have its moment where everyone's kind of like flocking there because there's, driven by the news cycle and everyone kind of has a reason. But, it's hard to use. The app is in Mandarin.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I was even just trying to sign up. I was having a lot of issues. I think it
Yes.
was it
Yeah.
was overloaded. I couldn't even get the like confirmation text for several hours. Um, so I think like this probably will end up like not being like a long-term thing that we're using. I'm, willing to admit that maybe I'm wrong about that, and we're all like gonna learn Mandarin. Duolingo said that there was like a huge uptick in
I'm sure
people signing up for.
that is one of the hardest languages to learn, especially if you're
Yes.
already like a native English speaker. Really, it's so hard.
Apparently, Duo the Owl is like,
Mhm.
oh, so now you want to learn Mandarin?
Mm-hmm.
Duo's too sassy. I can't. Duo's like always up, like, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. When you
But like,
don't launch the app in a week, yeah.
let's just take 1 second to talk about how fascinating it is that we've built a like portal directly from Chinese citizens to American citizens.
Yeah.
And like everything that I've seen so far is that those interactions are also very, very civil. Like, yes, we might be using Google Translate to be able to talk to each other, but it's mostly just like, hi Americans, hi Chinese people. I've seen some people like this one video of a trans person who posted on Red Note, and there were some comments in Chinese of like, you're ugly, whatever. And then there were just a bunch of people responding to that one person saying like, why do you need to be rude? Like, these are our new friends. That's so wholesome.
It's so wholesome.
It's wholesome for now. I wish the sort of dream was like, is this how we infiltrate the Great Wall? Is this how we really get into like China's restrictive internet ecosystem? It's not. It's not at all. But it is a fun. I guess like this is the year and this is the timeline of like I guess sort of like the dumbest things tend to be happening. Like the U.S. government was like, oh no, China app, bad, going to influence people, and then American citizens are like, I'm going to go right to China. I'm going to go right and take from the drip feed of their, I don't know, their services.
Yeah.
It seems hilarious, seems kind of ironic to me. Chris, it's what you were saying. It seems like nobody's trying to own this. I do think the Trump administration would love to like kill this ban because then they end up looking like the good guys. And that ends up, people will forget the history. Like literally people forget what happened 4 years ago when Trump was leaving office. Like people forget history, but they'll remember of what good he did for them, and he'll take that and run with it.
Yeah, I mean, during the election, people were saying like, oh, if Trump gets elected, does that mean we get more stimulus checks?
Yep.
There's so much more to talk about. Email us at
Go ahead.
So there's so much more to talk about when it comes to the TikTok ban. We don't know whether or not there's going to be a decision coming out today or in the next couple of days, but please stay tuned to Engadget.com for more news. Email us about any feelings you have at podcast@Engadget.com.
Let's move on to like the news around Meta and Mark Zuckerberg and his whole attitude change. But last week, while we were all at CES, we saw the news that Meta was getting rid of third-party fact checkers, which was a system they implemented to sort of police, I don't know, fact checking on their platforms. But I've read from a lot of people that it never really worked well. Carissa, can you break down, what's happening here? What's actually changing when it comes to content moderation on Meta platforms?
Yeah, there was a couple things that he announced. The one that he kind of led with that's gotten a lot of attention was, like you mentioned, the end of fact checking, and that was a program that they introduced after Trump's first election in 2016, when there was a lot of concerns about misinformation being a threat to democracy. This was after those stories about Macedonian teenagers running content farms on Facebook that had all these just incredibly viral, incredibly fake stories about the election. So they implemented this fact-checking program that essentially demotes content that's rated as false by their partners. That's gotten a lot of blowback from Republicans over the years, in particular. I mean, I think probably on the left a little bit too, but mostly from the right. So Zuck came out and said, we're getting rid of that. The fact checkers are too biased. We were sort of pressured into doing this by the legacy media. So they're getting rid of that. And then on the other hand, the other changes, and I think these are going to be way more consequential, was that they're basically loosening their content moderation standards in specific areas, particularly like conversations about LGBTQ people, immigration. That, for example, you can there's now moderation guidelines that say you can use like dehumanizing language about people that was previously banned. You can say that you can say LGBTQ people have mental illness and horrible things like that. And Zuckerberg has said that the justification that he's used is saying, well, people in the public sphere are saying these things, i.e., certain people in Congress. So therefore, you should be able to talk about it on Facebook. There was a
What
really
a what a let me just take a pause here and like
Mhm.
what a spineless slug this guy has like become. And I guess he always kind of was that. Like these folks tend to go lean into the political winds, but he particularly is really leaning into the incoming Trump administration as an opportunity to be very, very friendly to fascism. Like really, this is reminding me of the stories that we don't really talk about much right now. But I'm thinking of like the companies that really bent over backwards to work with like Nazi Germany and things that we don't. IBM
Yeah.
powered the databases that were being used to track Jewish citizens in Nazi Germany. What else? Coca-Cola broke a trade embargo and created Fanta to sell to Nazi Germany. Like these companies will. It's all about the dollar. It's all about like just continuing to be successful and make a profit. But there's so little like moral, I don't know, judgment happening here, and it feels even worse for something like Facebook, which is so in like so much of our communication is going over Facebook platforms. It is just terrifying. So I don't know, like, how are you feeling about Zuck at this point, Carissa?
I mean, it's you can look at it as like blatant
Mm-hmm.
opportunism. Um, there's been some reporting about, Zuck's beliefs and that he's kind of like a lot of people, powerful people in Silicon Valley has kind
Mm-hmm.
of moved to the right and has been, radicalized by post-COVID policies and stuff like that. I think that there's also kind of this uh thing like I saw this good point that Dave Wilner, who
Mm-hmm.
was like an early Facebook official, he wrote Facebook's first hateful content policy in like 2009. He did a great thread on Blue Sky where he
Mm-hmm.
basically made the point that this policy seems completely designed so that Meta won't have to action the accounts of people like Marjorie Taylor Greene,
Right.
who are,
Mm,
constantly saying hateful things and breaking their rules and then crying about, being censored by Facebook. That if you look at it, this whole policy just seems completely architected to,
Mm-hmm.
not have to punish those people anymore. And, I think that that says a lot. Like Zuck has obviously like made it clear where he stands on these issues, but I think he also looks at how the Biden administration treated Meta, and Joe Biden said that misinformation on Facebook was killing people, and I think that really had like a big impact on him. And he's like, "Well, why work with the left anymore? Because they're never gonna like us. So we know what
Yeah,
the right
you
wants."
you are making me face the consequences of my actions. This hurts my feelings. Therefore, you're making me a fascist. I'm sorry. It is actually kind of sad to see. There are comments from a lot of people who have worked at Facebook that basically define Mark Zuckerberg as somebody who is incapable of taking responsibility for anything he's really done. And the sort of thing where he says like he's done apologizing, where that kind of fell into his whole new glow up, his like surfer bro glow up with the chain and the Caesar shirts and everything. He's a lot more chill now. He's so
that's
much
not a
more chill.
glow up. He's still a dork if he's
Still a
got
dork. He's still a
Latin
dork.
on his shirts.
He's a cool dork. He's a billionaire dork, but still a dork. But that whole vibe shift kind of came where you're just like, yeah, I'm just not going to worry about these consequences of my platforms or whatever. Like he's not thinking about the impact of Meta and Facebook and Instagram when it comes to news and certain communities. He is all about like, let's build the metaverse. Let's build weird VR stuff. Like his whole focus totally ignores, I don't know, the actual impact of his platform. So it's
It's
sad.
not even the metaverse now. It's just like, let's put AI nonsense. Let's have AI characters on Facebook.
That's part of the
When,
metaverse. It
yeah,
is.
but
Yeah.
could that just be a cover for like all of the fake accounts that are already on Facebook?
I mean, it probably is. I know you wanted to like talk about some aspects of this, Ben. I know you had a lot of notes from last week. We were initially going to bring this all up because this news is from last week, but things have changed too. Like, um, let me see here. We saw news that Facebook is planning to lay off an additional 5% of workers. That dropped a couple days ago. They were working really hard. Facebook, Meta in general, is working hard to block links to PixelFed, which is the federated AT protocol photo sharing site. It's been blowing up, but hey, conveniently, they were not allowing people to link to it. I think the response was that those links were blocked by mistake, right? I think that's
Yeah,
what
it
they
was
said. Yeah.
the kind of typical response. It was an error. We fixed it.
Whoops.
No
Whoops.
explanation.
I'm sorry you noticed that we blocked this competitor. PixelFed, by the way, looks really great. It looks really clean. It reminds me of when Instagram first launched. It was just like the 4 startup guys, and I would have to email them about news and say, this is a cool photo sharing site. Very much reminiscent of that. Have you spent any time on it, Carissa?
Yeah, I've been sort of following it since I started covering kind of the activity pub universe because
Mm-hmm.
I think that's been a really kind of underappreciated project. We always hear about Mastodon, but PixelFed is good, and like now the apps just came out
Mm-hmm.
finally, and like you said, they're really clean. They have good design. It really feels kind of like old school Instagram, but also because it is on ActivityPub, I mean, you can share that stuff really easily to like Mastodon and other Fediverse sites. So like there's some really cool interoperability there. Um, Definitely worth checking out, especially if you're kind of over meta, want to find other alternatives. It's a good one. Um, the same developer who made PixelFed also has a TikTok Fediverse
Oh,
competitor
really?
called
Oh,
Loops.
all right.
I haven't been able to check that out yet,
This is
but
the future. We're just going to
yeah.
rebuild the entire internet in a federated, more open way, without, I don't know, without all these countries behind you, I guess. It's cool.
Yeah.
Have you seen Loops yet? Because I remember I saw the stories that was happening. Yeah.
I haven't checked it out yet,
Mhm.
but it seems I know he's like looking for donations. He's basically one guy trying to like stand up all these, big federated versions of like these huge services.
It's
Oh,
kind of great though. Like we used to talk about like we miss the old internet. We miss the days of like forums and blogs and like when you kind of owned your own stuff. And the whole thing about the federated platforms is that you kind of own your own profile and your content, and it can be reshaped and tied to in many different forms, but also tied across other services. And you'll be able to jump to different services easily rather than having like all your Instagram data being tied to Instagram. Very cool. Seems like that future of the internet is happening, but it has to be crowdfunded. You know, I don't. Maybe some rich people are going to help out, but I don't know where that's going to go. Anything you want to add about the meta stuff, Ben? Because you had a lot of thoughts. So
I
I just
did
want to know if you
have
want to call out any of these.
Yeah, I did have a lot of thoughts, and we talked about a lot of it. Carissa was very correct in saying that, like, Zuck's video
Mm-hmm.
was really like a targeted ad for congressional and White House Republicans. Um, but it's also kind of weird how he said that he's like moving moderators from California to Texas with the idea that they were going to be less biased in Texas,
Yeah, yeah.
because there was reporting saying that they already had moderators living in Texas, like hired through third-party firms. So
Mm-hmm.
it might be one of those things where they were really just trying to like get some good boy points out of the incoming
It's
administration
it's
for
all like
something that they're already doing.
it's all brown nosing. Like everything he's doing is brown nosing, and everyone is kind of doing this. Like all the big companies have donated to Trump's inaugural campaign. That includes
I
Apple.
mean,
That
yeah,
includes
and
Tim Cook, who had lunch with Trump and JD Vance, I think, this week. So we want it's these companies are all just doing what they can to survive. But I think Zuck is kind of going above and beyond to like really prove how useful he is and what a
And
little lackey he is.
let's talk
Hmm.
about why that is. So we've got the FTC antitrust case that
Right,
started
right.
under Trump, and they're trying to roll back the acquisition of Instagram that was happened 12 years ago, and also WhatsApp that happened 10 years ago. And Biden just kept that going because, hey, it might actually be a good idea. Maybe
Hmm.
he or some of his advisors, I'm talking about Biden's advisors, had some conversations with Lena Khan, and she was like, yeah, why don't you keep this going? But now Zuck is like, oh no, like the train has not stopped. It actually is going to court in a few months if it doesn't get like dropped by the FTC under this new
Hmm.
administration. So he probably really wants to do that.
That's actually a really good point, Ben. But also, I think even without like Zuck's brown nosing, like that will probably happen, right? Because the whole goal of like the new administration is screw regulatory approval, screw
Oh,
regulations,
absolutely.
screw these like these actual entities. Carissa, on your end, have you gotten a sense of like how the Trump administration would treat this particular case, or just I guess the FTC's like power to regulate companies in general.
Yeah. And just to add to Ben's good list right there, Trump also threatened to throw Mark Zuckerberg in jail during the campaign.
I remember that.
We shouldn't like underestimate just the like pure self-preservation aspect to all this.
I think it's so much self-preservation, because how else are you going to put yourself at the top of someone's good boy list if you don't like make this big show of changing all of the policies of your very big social media platform?
Yeah, and in terms of like how they're going to treat these tech companies, I mean, I think it's a given that they're going to be a lot more friendly, anti-regulation. We can also just look at who they are tapping. You know, Elon Musk, who's like the biggest anti-regulatory crusader, at least like the most vocal one, you know, is like a key Trump advisor, and you know, whether or not Doge is going to amount to anything, we know he has a lot of influence. You know, Mark Andreessen. You can go down the list. There's all these like kind of Silicon Valley like techno libertarians who are playing like key roles in advisors or, you know, appointments.
The entire All In podcast goes to Washington.
This is true. I also didn't realize how many of those folks were basically from South Africa, who were raised in that environment. Including, I did not know Peter Thiel was South African, and it all kind of clicks now. It's like, oh, you were raised in that environment of just complete apartheid, and okay, I guess this is how you see the world. This is how
are
you
they
want
nostalgic for hierarchy? Man, couldn't be.
Did you catch his Financial Times op-ed?
Yes. Ugh. Really, really tough to read. Like very, very much like you know, dumb guy, but with you know, a lot of money, energy in that. Because it's so incoherent. He doesn't really know what he wants to say, but you know, he's mad about changing progressive values and whatever. What were your thoughts on that, Carissa?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just shows like how you know, Peter Thiel's usually somebody who's like a little bit more like in the background and perceived as kind of like pulling the strings. Bob, you know, we know that like he was a big early booster of JD Vance, you know, before he ran for Senate. And I think this is kind of like him. It felt like to me like it was kind of him like bragging a little bit about like his influence and, you know, how you know, how like much power like his people like in his sphere now have. Like it kind of just felt like him showing off. I mean, the stuff he was saying was ridiculous, but you know, and then the funny thing was that got me was the little disclosure at the top that just said that he was like a technology entrepreneur and investor, which I'm like, that is quite an undersell of a disclosure.
He is killer of Gawker, you know?
Yeah.
He has many things, this man. Go ahead.
So, Carissa, I did want to bring up one last very funny thing. You heard about how Zuck might have been annoyed about his own website's policies because his knee surgery picture didn't do numbers, right?
Yeah, I think.
Do you want to talk about that, or should I?
Yeah, so there was some reporting. I forget who reported this originally.
Wall Street Journal, I think.
Wall Street Journal, yeah, thank you. And they said that he, you know, became upset about Meta. Meta had this policy around like health information not being able to go viral. You know, that I think was stemming from like a lot of the COVID and anti-vax policies. And when Zuckerberg tore his ACL, he had surgery. He posted this, you know, photo in his hospital bed post-surgery, and I guess it didn't get as much engagement and likes and everything as he had hoped, or like as he expects his post to do. And then, you know, he got mad. He looked into it. He found out it got caught up in this kind of like viral health information policy. And, you know, I think what it shows too is like, you know, we should never underestimate like how much of an impact it has on these guys. We saw the same thing with Elon Musk to just kind of have this like instantaneous, like massive amount of engagement with all of their content. Like, I think that really does break their brains a little bit. You know, we've seen this with Elon Musk. Like he's changed the X algorithm when like his posts don't do the numbers that he wants. And I think it just like shows like how much these people's like egos are really like caught up in just kind of having like, you know, anytime you post anything at all, you get a million, you know, likes and comments and all these things like right away.
And that's your value. That's your value as a person, as a human being. You are somebody who millions of people like. I think that's what they're getting from it. Yeah.
I mean, it does do something to you. Like, have you ever had, you have a tweet or something that goes like insanely viral where you're just like constantly seeing like number go up and
Mm-hmm.
comment. Like, it's like, it doesn't matter if it's
It's pure
positive or
adrenaline.
negative. Like, it does
Feels
something like
good.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you get that. You're like, keep checking it. Like, I've had that experience. Like,
Yeah. And
it's
to
not like
live in that environment all the time would be brain breaking.
it's not
Also,
normal.
it's not normal. Also, like, just the way these guys react to a little bit of criticism, a little bit of mocking, like people making fun of them. Like, so many people are basically tracing Trump's run for presidency back to when, Obama was basically making fun of him at the White House press dinner, right? So these small moments that really just like flip people and make them really committed to proving you wrong. I guess it's a whole thing. All right, we're going to be coming back to this story for sure. Anything you want to add as we wrap this up, Chris, when it comes to Meta's moderation changes?
Just that I think the big thing to watch will be
Mhm.
how they roll this out globally. Right now, a lot of this stuff is US only, which I think says a lot about, who this is for and
Mhm.
who, Mark Zuckerberg is trying to please. But, there's a reason why these policies exist. They have big consequences. We saw that misinformation and hate speech on Facebook once helped incite a genocide
Mhm.
um, in another country. And like, that's, something we shouldn't like underestimate the impact that Meta's platforms can have in these places. And, I think for now they've said that they only are planning on rolling back fact checking in the US. But, if and when they do start doing this in other places, I think, we should really be careful to kind of watch like how that plays out because, history has shown us there could be huge consequences there.
Also, keep an eye on Brazil.
Yeah.
Brazil immediately hit back to Meta saying, like, what do you mean no fact checking?
All right. Let us know your thoughts on this podcast at Engadget.com. Let's move on to some other news real quick. And the thing we really got to talk about is, hey, of all the important stuff happening, in the world and in content moderation news, Nintendo announced the Switch 2. They finally did it after so many rumors, after lots of leaks from case manufacturers. That was going around CES, and we were like debating like how closely we would cover that. But yeah, looks like the rumors were true. It's a slightly bigger Switch. It looks like a Switch with a bigger screen, slightly bigger Joy-Cons. They
Kind of looks
attach.
like a Wii U.
I don't think Nintendo ever wants you to utter those words, Ben. But
Yeah, I know. I'm
it does
sorry.
kind of look like the size of a Wii U, sort of. Yeah, except much, much thinner. Big difference is the Joy-Cons connect magnetically rather than going down sliding rails, and the sliding rails sucked. Like within the first week of me using a Switch, like the sliding rail just like stopped halting it in the proper place. It would just like fly off while you're playing a game. Glad to see that change there. We have very little details. There is a Nintendo Direct coming April 2nd that is going to have more of the actual information about this, about pricing and whatnot, and actual power and everything. One little tidbit that people found is it looks like within the Joy-Con, like along the sensor array, it looks like there's an optical sensor there. And people are thinking, can you just like take that Joy-Con and kind of use it as a mouse? Can you like roll it along a flat surface and have some fine-tuned operations there, which would be really useful for a game like Mario Maker, where you're like really trying to fine-tune like where you put blocks and everything. So I think that's kind of interesting. Everyone is speculating about that. What's
They
up?
did show that as a possible use case in the video. They
Well, they
had a
showed
Joy-Con
something.
like
Yes.
racing along what
Yes.
looked like a table, and I'm thinking that is pointing in that direction.
Which would be a weirdly weird again, this is why I kind of love Nintendo of like doing the weird swings. Like nobody expected the Wii. The GameCube was like it could not really compete. I love the GameCube, but it could not really compete against the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox. Then Nintendo was like, okay, cheap hardware and motion controls. How about that, suckers? And it was the biggest thing in the world, and then they thought, okay, we could just do the Wii U. Let's do like a wireless tablet tied to this thing. Failed completely. But it's funny how Nintendo like looks at its decisions, even when they're wild swings, and like takes from it. Like I don't think the Switch would have happened without them seeing how the Wii U worked, because a lot of people like using the Wii U as just a portable console where you could have your base unit for the Wii U in your living room, but take the actual tablet to your bedroom or something and still play a game. And I think they saw that was a use case, and that kind of led to the Switch. And now they're just like, what else can we do with this? Because I think the idea of Switch motion controls is kind of going away, right? Like the Joy-Cons do some basic motion controls. I never liked it. The Nintendo game ARMS you could pretend to box and play that game. It never worked well. I don't think it felt as good as it did on the Wii. So, sure, optical sensor. Use your Switch thing as a mouse for different types of games, especially for like strategy RPG games. I could see it being a thing. I don't know. Krista, are you much of a Switch head? Sorry to wrap you into this conversation.
I am actually. Switch is like the only kind of console
Nice.
that I play, and I guess I haven't been following the Switch too, but my big question is like, will it kind of enable these kind of like next gen games, or even make other more intensive games more playable? I'm thinking specifically of Hogwarts Legacy. I bought that for Switch. It is unplayable on
Oh,
Switch.
it is really? Wow.
I find it
Yeah.
unplayable.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, on a basic level, I think it should, Krista, because like the Switch is running a 7-year of really, really old
mhm.
chipset. And it's amazing that we can run what we can. Like it's amazing the Zelda games can run on that thing. But the new one will definitely have a more modern processor. So they're saying it's compatible with most Switch games, including
Mhm.
physical and digital games. Some titles may not work, and I'm really interested in seeing what those limitations are.
True.
But at the basic level, like, yeah, they're gonna have to like let those old games take advantage of the new hardware. And also from what we're seeing, Nintendo is very pissed at seeing all the people with Switch emulators taking content and uploading it to YouTube and being like, here's Tears of the Kingdom in 4K 60 FPS. You'll never get this on a Nintendo system. I do think they want people to have a better experience with these games too. So we're all hoping that it's going to be much better.
I'm
Yeah.
really hoping that OLED screen is going to be standard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fingers crossed, but I'm not sure if
It's
that's going to
Nintendo,
be
man.
real.
I feel like it's going to go the Steam Deck route, where Steam Deck right now, you have an OLED option. Sure, it's beautiful. You want the basic ass Steam Deck, you want something that is hundreds of dollars cheaper, you get a LCD screen. I think a
Or
lot of people would
maybe
just be fine with that. Mhm.
maybe hopefully release both at the same time.
Yeah,
You can
both at the
buy
same
the
time.
premium option and
Yeah.
the LCD option, especially for like young kids who are still going to be a large demographic for the Switch 2. I don't know if they care too much about OLED versus LCD, so just let them, destroy something that is cheaper if they're going to destroy it.
Most definitely. And maybe we don't even know like what games will be exclusive just to the Switch 2 and won't run on the old system. They're gonna have to do that because that hardware is so old. But you know what the best console is for a young child is the Switch Lite, because that thing is
Mm.
tiny. It is relatively inexpensive. It plays all the games. My daughter is like, fully into Mario Kart at this point, and I can play Mario Kart with her because that thing fits in her hands and she can understand how to use the controls. So uh, I don't think we'll see like a Switch 2 Lite immediately, because they love to like wait a couple of years and make you either rebuy a console or buy a companion to the console you bought, recently. So we'll probably see that eventually too. But yeah, exciting. Nothing much else to say other than we'll be keeping an eye on this news, folks. And it's cool. It's kind of funny that Nintendo's just like, here's a random Thursday at 8 a.m. We're just gonna drop this video. I do feel like it just felt like they were kind of responding to the leaks, that they just had to get something
Yeah.
out. Whereas this is a whole new Nintendo console. You remember when they announced the Switch, it was like this whole video, people playing on rooftops and like introducing the concept of a portable console. This one's like, yeah, well, you know what a Switch is, guys. This is bigger. This is bigger and it has bigger controllers.
They're going to have another rollout video like that at the
Mhm.
Nintendo Direct. I think that this video really was a response to the
Mhm.
fact that there were so many leaks, so you can't just be coy about it. Maybe if there were fewer leaks, we would only see, a little bit of rumbling before the Direct
Maybe.
in April. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't I see people complaining that the leakers are like ruining Nintendo's launch plans. I'm like, who are you working for? Like your job is not to secure Nintendo's product launch timeline. You're the leakers, journalists, everybody, like we want to get information out there so people see it sooner. Like that's how the world of information works. Just some real in the gaming world, especially game fans, are just kind of wild sometimes. We will be keeping an eye on the Switch 2. Definitely let us know what you think. I have one of I forget which of the new consoles, like the Retroid Pocket, I think 5. I have one of those tiny things now. There are so many different portable systems that can play a lot of old games emulated, or just Android games. So this whole like ecosystem is really interesting. We saw a whole bunch of great Windows gaming portable PCs, either Windows or Steam, back at CES. So it'll be real interesting to see how the Switch 2 competes to all that. The main thing is it has Mario, it has Zelda, so I guess Nintendo doesn't care that there are like a dozen other devices that do Switch-esque stuff now. I do wonder if they'll do the thing where it's like, hey, Xbox cloud streaming, Microsoft, you wanna partner up over here? Get some real cloud streaming going on, because you can cloud
Yeah.
stream some Switch games right now. So we shall see, folks. Anything, I feel like we gotta wrap, but typically we do ask you guys if you have any pop culture things you want to shout out, recommend to our audience. Krista, is there anything you've been reading, watching, listening to you want to recommend to people?
Oh, nah.
It's okay. It's okay.
You can call
Pass.
on me, Dev.
Pass. Go ahead, Ben.
So speaking of the Switch, I've recently been picking up my Switch a lot recently, and I said that twice. I've been picking up my Switch a lot recently, and I feel like the Switch is saying to me, like, hey, you haven't finished Tears of the Kingdom. Are we going to finish that? You've like taken a couple of stabs at Disco Elysium. That game is basically a book. Do you want to try that again? And I'm like, I'm sorry, Switch, no. You play Balatro. And then it's like, oh my God.
Sick monster. Yeah.
Yes, Balatro is as good as people say it is. And it's also kind of interesting how this connects with another thing that we were talking about just a few minutes ago with, like, if you want to see number go up, if you find it really exciting to see number go up and like get enormous multipliers and just get like a logarithm of points all at once, go check out Balatro. Yes, it is kind of like playing card themed in the sense of like, poker cards, but you don't have to use real money for this. It's a rogue light, so you will continue getting better and better and higher scores every time you play. Just go and check it out. I do think that it deserved to be in the running for Game of the Year.
Basically, it's doing what Vampire Survivors did to us a couple years ago. Number go up, you feel really powerful. I'm not a huge fan of card video games in general or poker, but it's fun. The music's good. Really nice bit of chip tunes over there in Balatro. So that's good. Let me see here. I do want to shout out Pantheon. I think I talked about it as one of those like really good AMC animated sci-fi shows that nobody saw because it was on AMC Plus. I did finish season 1. That's on Netflix right now, and this is good stuff, like really good science fiction. Nods to Ghost in the Shell, nods to Evangelion, nods also just like bringing up whole new ideas of artificial intelligence or how we would handle that, like uploaded intelligence, somebody uploading their brain to a digital space. It's really cool. I think the animation's good, and it's just a really well done story. So check out Pantheon. That is on Netflix right now. And that's it for now. I mean, Sundance is going to be starting in a couple weeks, so I'll be watching a lot of movies out of that and seeing if there are any like techie or sci-fi films to be shouting out. Also, stay tuned to the end of this episode. I forgot to mention at this beginning, but I'll record a thing for you, Ben. Stay tuned to the end of this episode for my chat with the creator of Severance. By the way, we chatted around briefly around the launch of Severance Season 2, which is hitting the day you're probably listening to this podcast. It's hitting Friday of this week. And it's very good. I think it's fantastic. A great follow-up to the first season. So be sure to stay tuned and check out that chat.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Our theme music is by game composer Dale North. Our outro music is by our former managing editor, Terrence O'Brien. The podcast is produced by me, Ben Ellman. You can find Carissa online at
Carissa B on Blue Sky, X, Threads, pretty much all of and PixelFed.
Everywhere.
Yeah. Can you take another try at that? Because your voice cracked a little bit at the beginning.
Carissa B on Blue Sky, Threads, X, and PixelFed. And
you can find Devindra online at
Devindra everywhere. I think also PixelFed. I haven't posted anything there yet, but I'm also, Blue Sky is the main place I post. Check me out on the Filmcast at thefilmcast.com.
And you can find me on Blue Sky as well at heybellman.bluesky.social. Need to find the thing again. Okay, yes. Email us at podcast Email us at podcast@engadget.com. Leave us a review on iTunes because I promise you it really does help. And subscribe on anything that gets podcasts. That includes Spotify.
All right.
Okay. Chat, we can
Krista, you are
finally
free to
talk
run,
you.
Krista, if you
Okay.
need to do other stuff. But thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk with chat for a bit.
Chat, I'm so sorry that we starved you for this whole time. So let's start reading chat. Let's start talking to chat. So Turbine says LCD is better than janky OLED. Please cite your sources there.
Wait, who said this?
Turbine in the chat. All I want is a really nice like OLED TV, but right now I don't think I can afford it, unfortunately.
OLED's gone down in price quite a bit. So
it's gone down in price, but it has not gone down in price quite enough for me, unfortunately.
You could get a 65-inch OLED for $1,000 right now, which is insane. But yes, you can also get a 65-inch decent LCD for $500. So that's the gap.
You know what else I have to probably spend $1,000 on? A decent phone upgrade, because finally my my iPhone SE2 kicked the bucket.
It's not
kicked the bucket. It is kicking the bucket.
I'm
the
sorry.
Microphone no longer works.
Get the Pro, Ben. Just get the Pro. Get the new Pro. Come on.
This phone is almost like 5 years old or so. Paradise says today's date has been a rumor for the Switch 2 unveil for a bit. So I don't know. Maybe they wanted to honor that as well. But maybe they could have been using like the rumor mill to their advantage, and they were like, okay, fine, if like all of these leaks are happening, then we might as well schedule this little teaser video to go out during one of these like leak dates as well.
I think so. I mean, it's Nintendo, like literally, and you post one thing and it'll become, the news cycle of the day. So it's totally fine.
Gotama says Balatro is also break the rules themed. Every time you ask yourself, can I do this? The answer is yes.
That's fun. I do like a game that does that. Like I learned that in the original Super Mario Brothers, where, I can there are invisible blocks here. I could go down these pipes.
Yeah.
That definitely like broke my brain as a 5-year-old. Yeah.
Mo Esquire says, is that what the way we're going to get tech unveils? We legit leaked our way into a full Nintendo Switch unveiling.
This has happened before. Like other companies have responded to leaks just being like, hey, here's the thing. Shut up. Just shut up already. Wait a couple more months. We got more details.
I mean, it's so funny though that like a device manufacturer would get annoyed at that, because if there are so many leaks happening, that also means that you have like your audience really primed to buy it on day one. But I don't know, maybe they want to release things on their own or on their own schedule. Declan says, but Dev, they have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize return to investors. They would stop supporting evil fascists, but the stock price would suffer, and that wouldn't be nice to the investors.
That would be un-American, if we didn't make as much money. Yeah.
Let me tell you that like around February of last year, I started playing Helldivers, and I was like, man, I sure do hope this game is as fun to play in November of 2024 as it is now in February of 2024. I'm still playing Helldivers. It's still pretty fun, but now I'm listening to the like fake commercials that they have on the ships, like when you're in lobby about to like actually go into a game, and I'm like, man, this is getting closer and closer to reality by the day.
Very close.
And this was like from a school of thought that was like, you know what, Starship Troopers, the who was the director of Starship Troopers?
Yeah. You asked me the wrong time, but yeah, RoboCop director. Yeah.
Okay, yes, the RoboCop director, but like he was also
Verhoeven. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. So like, you know what? Verhoeven was too subtle.
I love that movie. I saw that movie as a teenager too. It was just like perfect. It was like, oh yeah, this is a smart movie that knows exactly what it's doing. Starship Troopers was basically anime made into like a live action movie, and that movie ruled. Still ruled. I see we're having a couple conversations. Turbine is talking about bad OLED, and I agree. Bad OLED can be bad. There's not much bad OLED. I don't know, like as much bad OLED as there used to be these days. Samsung used to produce like really cheap OLED tablets, and they just didn't look as good as the other stuff. So whatever floats your boat. You can always save money and go LCD. To me, like my eyes know OLED, and my eyes know that contrast ratio, and it is typically great.
Declan says, Ben, will you be hell diving to Canada this summer? Declan, 1, shh. 2, I actually have been playing Helldivers with this guy from Canada recently, and man, he sounds like he comes straight out of Letterkenny. He's all like, I mean, very polite, but then between games, he's like, "Oh yeah, I got to go rock a piss," or "Can I just step out for a dart, boys? Like, give me a second." So DPro9's talking about Red Note. I just think it's really funny that so many Americans are going directly to the source of like giving their data to the Chinese Communist Party. I wonder how that's going to figure. Like, I just wonder how that's going to play out, because
I do wonder if that's gonna be like, now the politicians are like, well, we're actually making it worse by taking TikTok away. Maybe we should just leave
that's
TikTok
what we were
alone and
talking
let
about.
them, let them do the thing.
Declan again says, I use TikTok here in Canada. I get funny videos. I went to Ireland for 3 weeks in the summer, and after a couple of days, I got anti-immigration videos.
Oh yeah.
Back in Canada, it returned to fun. I've noticed that also, like, TikTok does kind of get localized to wherever you might be.
Oh yeah.
So a couple of months ago, or actually it was just last month in December, I was traveling to Minneapolis with a friend, and I started getting a whole bunch of like Minneapolis based things. My Instagram ads are still not quite understanding that I'm not in Minneapolis anymore.
My TikToks like show local restaurants and show things happening in my town and towns around me. Instagram has never highlighted anything local to me.
Which is saying that TikTok has location data for its users, and it might be able to see where users are moving around. So if we use that logic and the idea that, like, yes, or the idea that like maybe government personnel, or let's say like soldiers, might have TikTok on their personal phones. If they see a bunch of pings going from X place to Y place, they might be able to figure out that there are some kind of troop movements or something.
Maybe.
This is really, really speculative, though.
I mean, that's
Please
like the
don't quote
old
me on this.
Garmin thing, or the old like,
Yes, exactly. I'm using that same logic of like being able to find the perimeter of military bases because people are running around the perimeter.
I think we at least a lot of those companies usually don't have direct access to the location data, but they can like create databases where if a user is close to a location for this ad, it can like feed that thing to the user. But we don't know. We don't know how a lot of this stuff works. Yeah. It was a good chat. It was good to be back from CES. My back is not fully recovered. That's not fun. But we are preparing for a bunch of things. We've got reviews upcoming, folks. You can just kind of guess what's coming up soon, based on what was the biggest coverage at CES. I wish we were seeing the Switch 2 sooner, though. There are those the Nintendo Experience events that they are launching. I'm sure we're going to send somebody to the like New York one, but beyond that, like I would love to get my hands on the Switch 2 soon.
Dude named Charlie says, Ben, get a iPhone 15 Pro Max discounted. Don't go for the 16 for the extra cash. 15 is a perfect device.
That's a good tip.
It is the last one with Lightning too, and I have a lot of Lightning. Oh, really?
No. 15 Pro Max is USB-C. I have a 15 Pro Max.
Oh, wow.
But it also gets Apple Intelligence. So that's kind of the big deal. The 15 Pro didn't get Apple Intelligence because it doesn't have as much RAM. But also, like, look at your carrier, because carriers offer insane deals. So even if you have an old phone, like, a lot of them will still just offer you a shit ton of money to upgrade to whatever the newest thing is. And in that case, if the Pro Max is too big for you, Ben, I would go hold both, because the titanium change did make a big difference. You should get the Pro at the very least. Get the Pro.
I'm thinking the screen real estate, or like just the size of the screen, might be a little bit too big for me, because you can't tell from video, but I am not a big man. I am like 5'8" on a good day. So
I mean, I'm
I do
5'8".
have.
I feel like we'd be comparable there. I don't
Oh
know.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And how do you feel about
it's
stretching your
good.
thumb
It's
all the way
fine.
across? Really?
It's fine, but maybe I've got big hands or something, but, like, it's you can't reach the tippy top, but, you readjust, you learn to live, but what I have found is actually having the bigger screen is just, like, if I'm, like, wiped and I just need to sit in bed and not do anything for a while, it is really nice to have a bigger screen to just sit and watch TV or videos or
Mm,
something.
mm,
Browsing the web, you get more view, like, you get more multitasking abilities. Sometimes I'm like, I gotta be in Slack, but I'm also watching this YouTube video in picture, and also I'm like taking notes in another app, and like the real estate is actually functionally better. So go to a store and see how they feel to you, Ben. But
yeah.
definitely a pro, I'd say.
Turbine says maybe try a flip phone. And Mo Esquire said a really nice thing, which is great job as always, pod crew. This is my weekly appointment viewing. That is the best thing that you can tell us. Thank you so
Yay.
much. I'm not sure that I'm going to go Team Green, though. I don't know if I'm going to go get an Android.
I have like thought like I should just get like a decent foldable just to have some experience with them, and
True.
but it'll be a secondary phone.
Okay, so I think that's it from us. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around and talking to us. We apologize that we weren't able to do a break in the middle, but we did want to be conscious of Carissa's hard out.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah, sometimes we can't talk directly to chat, but we do love to talk to chat. We do love doing the live stream because it really just leads to better recordings. Like I said, you remember stuff that we forget. You make the episodes better pretty consistently. So the video is done by Devindra, camera switching done by Devindra, OBS done by Devindra. Devindra, give me the camera switching
Bunch of stuff.
job back.
I mean, if you can do the mirroring, the window mirroring, I think we had problems.
Yeah.
That was the
Mhm.
problem.
I
So
I think I can
we
figure
can
that
try
out.
to juggle that.
Yeah, we can figure that out. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, folks. We're out.